Hi, everybody, and welcome back to our next installment of our SBIR STTR Speaker Series. Today, we are going to be focusing on successful SBIR strategies. We're excited to hear from Anna Mesquita and Kristian Mueller from BW & Co., a firm that specializes in navigating the complexities of grant applications. Anna is a biomedical researcher and consultant with extensive experience in grant writing and project management for agencies like the NIH and the DoD. And Kristian is an aerospace engineer with over 20 years of experience leading high-impact projects for NASA, DoD, and DOE. Let's dive in. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for having us. All right, Anna, you want to introduce yourself first?
Yes. So my name is Anna. My expertise in biomedical research. I was a biomedical researcher for 13 years, and my specialty is medtech and biotech. So I'm a grant project consultant at BW & Co. And what we do is apply for grants under the SBIR program. Also research grants when pertinent, but mostly SBIRs.
And I'm Chris. I'm Anna's sidekick. I do the non-medical side of things, the project management side at BW & Co. Been there for a year, been in the industry for over 25 years, or close to 25 years now. I don't want to date myself, but mostly in project and program management. Started out at the Johnson Space Center in Houston, and have done for the last 10 years or so, mostly SBIR and STTRs, either on the writing side or also on the technical management side of things and the contract negotiation side. And I love working with small companies, especially startups, because the technology that comes out of those companies is just fantastic in and of itself, but also because there's just a whole lot of good potential for making the world a better place. So I'm excited to hear some of the spread some of the good news here in terms of the technology that's out here that we're going to be talking about today, but also if you guys want to get in contact with us, learning about your technologies that you guys have. So I'm going to hand it over to Anna. She's going to kick it off, and then we'll switch back and forth a little bit.
Okay, thank you.
And I'm going to share the screen here.
Okay, so our presentation is going to focus on the SBIR program, but on success. So we're going to show you strategies on the different centers and how to succeed. So what's the SBIR and STTR program? SBIR stands for Small Business Innovation Research, and it's a government program meant to help small business bring new technology to the market. The difference between the SBIR and the STTR is that the STTR is the technology transfer, so it's meant to be done in collaboration from the small business with a university or a nonprofit organization, and the technology that's been developed, for example, at a university, will be transferred and be able to be commercialized. You can pass. There's a very simple eligibility requirement. You have to be a for-profit small business. You have to be located in the United States. And to fit the definition of a small business, you usually have to have less than 500 employees, including affiliates. And your ownership should be you should have at least 51% of your company owned and controlled by a US citizen or a permanent resident. So that's somebody with a green card. The principal investigator, so whoever is going to be the lead researcher on that proposal, is the most important person, and that person has to be at least 50% of the time employed by the company. This makes a lot of sense because you might have your other job and you can't just say, okay, I'm going to make a small business and apply for an SBIR grant, and I'm just going to dedicate 10 hours a week. That wouldn't work. Your main means of employment has to be the small company. In the STTR, since it's a collaboration between the small business and the partner or university, the PI can be either from the university or the small business. And the SBIR, the company owns the technology. Everything is developed by the company, but in the STTR, there's requirements. So at least 40% of the research has to be conducted by the small business, and at least 30% must be conducted by the partner. So one of the things we're going to focus our presentation on are the different agencies, because each of them have specific topics. So depending on what your company focus on, you will need to search for those topics. And this is not just a research grant. So whatever you're putting to the market, whatever your innovation is, needs to have a potential to be commercialized. Yeah.
Okay, thanks, Anna. The participating agencies that participate in SBIRs are many. We have about 11 of them. They're all listed here from the top left to the top right, and then bottom left to bottom right in order of precedence in terms of how much funding goes to those agencies. We'll talk about more of that in just a little bit. And each one of those agencies has sub-agencies, subcomponents, and they all have slightly different requirements for their solicitations, but they all have one way or another SBIR programs. Any agency that has over, I think, $100 million budget, they have to allocate about 3.2% of their research and development budget towards the SBIR program, an STTR program, which is sometimes called Silver and Sitter, so that you know. But in terms of what you see on the screen is the Department of Defense, Human Health and Services, under which we also have the NIH, which receives most of the funding, Department of Energy, the NSF, NASA, Department of Homeland Security, which I expect to grow the next several years, Department of Commerce, which has the NOAA department, and the NIST, the NIST, National Institute of Standards, the Tree of Knowledge for the Education department, and of course the Department of Transportation, the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency. I'm hoping that it'll survive going forward as well. There are some rumors there, so hopefully, yeah, it'll remain intact. You might see some decrease in funding, so that's all things that you want to consider when applying. And then, of course, the USDA, Agriculture Department. The funding agencies, or the funding by agency, rather, this is for the last year, 2023, from SBIR.gov. We'll talk about all kinds of different resources. Towards the end, we have a list of all the different resources that you can go to online. This one shows the green line on the bottom left, the DoD on the x-axis there, and then on the left-hand side on the y-axis, you see it receives about, or it did in 2023, 2.2 billion. So it's by and large the largest contribution there, and then followed closely by the HHS. Most of it, again, which I mentioned, was the NIH department, about 2.4 or so billion. And then it drops off precipitously. You know, the DOE and the NASA and NSF still have several $100 million, and then quite a bit less for the other departments. Now, that's not to say that you can't get funded there. As a matter of fact, you should get funded there and look into those as well, because it will see that the award rate is about the same across the board. It just means that there's larger percentages of you having a larger chance of getting more projects from those agencies with the most funding. So here's the funding by state, and I didn't get to highlight, but the Nevada is in here somewhere. It's on the very bottom, so not a whole lot for 2023, but hopefully we can try to change that here with Nevada startup and us providing some more information on how to do that. So that's the idea. Most of them, most of the funds have gone historically, not just in 23, but historically to California right here, Silicon Valley, of course, but also Massachusetts. There we have some lots of funding centers, MIT, Harvard, I'm sure have something to do with it, but also Phase 0 startup potential, which Startup Nevada is helping out with here. And so that's what you need. It's the hardest part is always the start. So getting a start is what needs to be done first, and that's the hardest part. And so we'll hopefully help out in that regard a little bit. Here we have funding for Nevada, and in particular 2023. You can see on the right-hand side the total awards 27. I won't go over all those, but you can see where they landed, how many in each department there. But as I mentioned earlier, the award rates are similar across all agencies. If you look across the statistics, they're on SBIR.gov. It's about 10 to 15% for phase ones and 40 to 60% for phase two. So the strategy there, which we'll come back to in the later part of the slides here, is that you do want to get started with a phase one, primarily if you have technology that's ready for phase two, then with phase two. But once you're in, it's a lot easier to get a phase two, as the statistics show. So the hard part again is to start. And Anna's going to talk a little bit more about the health and human services.
Mm-hmm. Yes, thank you, Kristian. The health and human services includes the NIH, CDC, and FDA. They are looking for projects that have an unmet medical need in general, and these solicitations, the general solicitation for the omnibus happens 3 times a year in January, April, and September, but they have additional funding opportunities across the year that you can apply for specific topics. So if you keep an eye out for them, there's more opportunities than just those 3 dates. Their budget is typically for phase one around 300K, for phase two around 2 million, and they have different ranges of time. As you will see, more or less, phase ones can go from 6 months to 2 years, but more common to 1 year, and phase twos from 1 to 3 years, but usually they range around 1.5 to 2 years. The health and human services also allow for fast-track applications, which are applications that combine phase one and phase two together, so you can apply for both at the same time. I would also like to mention that some of the agencies, if you develop, so phase one is typically R&D and feasibility, and phase two is commercialization, so you need to have the R&D done already. Some agencies like the HHS allow you to do the R&D on your own and apply directly to phase two. So you don't have to go through phase one, but many of the agencies do. They require that you apply for phase one first, and then once you completed the phase one, you can transition to phase two. But that's not all of them. So as I said, they're looking for therapeutics, diagnostics, cancer, digital health, but also the CDC and the FDA are included. So environmental safety, contaminants, food and regulations, and also medical devices and surgery. In terms of Nevada, you will see here the perspective on the SBIR and STTR from 2015 to 2023. And there's usually tens of applications, so in the 2 digits, between 8 and 15, I would say, applicants, and then there's 1 to 4 awardees on all the proposals. SBIR, STTR, phase 1s, 2, fast tracks, directs, and all. So it looks like there's an improvement, but there's an area that still we could see more applicants from here. The Department of Transportation follows the same model. They have an annual solicitation for phase one, phase two, and 2B awards. So the phase 2B happens when you completed your commercialization phase 2. You already developed your product, you did a clinical trial, or you prototyped everything, but you are a bit short. So you need a little bit of extra money to continue your research. Some people call this award the Bridge Award because it helps you bridge that little bit after commercialization that you need. So get your first investor, venture capital. So some agencies have the 2B award. One good thing about some of these agencies, which is the case of the Department of Transportation, is that once you submit the grant, in 90 days, you will know the response. Phase 1 and phase 2 are similar, the ranges from what I told already for the other agency. And the topics, obviously, Department of Transportation, what they're looking for is automation and connected vehicles, materials and manufacturing, environmental sustainability, safety technologies, mobility, and transportation infrastructure. In the right side, we have a few success stories. You will get this slide, so you can go through the success stories yourself, and you can also check them on the websites we listed. But for example, we have Advent Innovations who developed autonomous robot that disinfects and does the contamination of transit assets. In the Department of Commerce, we have two main sections, NOAA, or National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. They put out a solicitation a year, usually in November, also 60 to 90 days to know the answer. And the ranges are also phase 1 to 100K, and phase 2 is a bit lower than the others, 690,000. And in this case, they are interested in climate and weather, oceans, coasts and fisheries, satellites, and chartering surveying. In the examples, we have, for example, Blue Ocean Gear, who has innovative fishing technologies to reduce marine and mammal entanglement. And there's other examples that you can also check. Under the Department of Commerce, we also have the National Institute of Standards and Technologies. They also have an annual solicitation for phase 1 and phase 2. Their pay lines are a bit lower, 100K for phase 1 and 400 for phase 2, but that's only 24 months of research. And they look into advanced manufacturing, into quantum information science, metrology and measurement, nanotechnology, information technology, and health and public safety technologies. Some examples, so they have a secure email agent, DNS that improves infrastructure. And there's also other examples you can check. Now the Department of Agriculture, this is an area I think there's a lot of Nevada tech that is looking to apply for. And we also have experience on projects like this. So they also have phase 1 and phase 2. Phase 1 usually comes out in July and the due date in October. And for phase 2, usually due date is in February. Same thing, around 200K for 8 months for phase 1 and 650 for 1 year for phase 2. They're looking for animal and plant production and protection, aquaculture, biofuels, food and science, nutrition, rural and community development, and small and mid-sized farms. Success stories, we have Prairie Aquatech, where they developed a plant-based ingredient for fermentation technology to improve food quality. And Hive Tech, I really like this one because they improved honeybee health with this climate control apiary, which is very important, as you know. Department of Education. The Department of Education doesn't award so many grants a year. They have one solicitation which should be open right now. And the thing I would like to mention is that their phase 1 has two types of phase 1, 1A and 1B. 1A is when you're starting from scratch to develop a product from zero. And 1B is once you have a prototype and you just want to add some features. Can you pass? They're looking for technology that will improve the experience of students, teachers, or administrators. So the two success stories we have is one generative AI learning assistant and an app that helps students learn history. Do you pass?
All right, then we have the Department of Homeland Security. as mentioned, I think we're expecting this to grow a little bit, hopefully, in the coming years. They have annual solicitations, typically released in December, and the turnaround time is only about 90 days from submission deadline, so it's rather quick. You'll learn about whether or not you will receive your award or not. From the budget standpoint, 175,000 average for phase 1, a little short on the 5 months. Usually they're 6 months or longer, except for the military, they have a couple of 3 months ones. Phase 2 budgets average 1 to 5 million, and for 2 to 3 years. The topics, as they, as stands to reason, include aviation security, biological threats, border security. Again, it's probably going to go up funding on that one, counterterrorism, and so forth. Some of the success stories here, we have Luma Labs from Plano, Texas. They developed an audio identification, so an authentication using AI in real time to combat spoofing. And it's being implemented right now at some of the banks, the larger banks, and some other companies. When you call in and they verify, they ask these silly questions, not necessarily silly, but annoying questions, and you have to answer them and remember your own answers. Well, it turns out that a lot of those, or like more than 50%, can be found out by spoofers. So people that are malignant, they go on the web, search for answers, and they find your answers that you might have used, whether or not it's your maiden name, address, phone numbers, etc. And so this AI goes out and analyzes in real time when you start calling whether or not, based on your voice quality and other factors, whether or not you're actually the real person that you claim you are. So it's pretty interesting. We have also some sensors for hazardous gases and particulate matter. For firefighters under the first responder technologies for the Homeland Security. Fantastic for firefighters when they go out, they can wear it on their bodies to see whether or not they're in hazards or in hazardous conditions, or how bad the hazardous conditions are to evaluate thereafter later on. Now to the Department of Defense, the biggest kahuna with all kinds of funding going their way, or coming from them rather. They are organized nicely in the sense that there's all kinds of different departments, of course. The components, they call them, the Army, the Navy, the Air Force, now the Space Force as well. But there's also others, Defense Logistics Agencies, Defense Health Agencies, so lots of Special Operations Forces. All those have some sort of an SBIR program. A lot of them, most of them are housed under these broad agency announcement, BAAs, as listed here on the solicitation process on the left. They have about 3 that they release per year throughout the year. We're currently there on the SBIR 25.1, so it just came out yesterday, the pre-release. They'll open in January for February submission. So that's a BA where all the departments, all the branches of the military are listed. So all the different topics, it's huge to document solicitation. Don't be scared to look through it. You'll have to, we'll talk about that in a second as well. But you'll just look for the right department in there and for the right technology or the topic area, that is. So that's 3 times a year. But then also as of this fiscal year, so 25, the DoD added like a recurring BAA, which is the 25.4. And by the way, the equivalents are STTRs 25.D. So they used letters for the STTRs. They come out on a monthly basis. And so with new releases. So we're on release number 2 right now, again, opened yesterday. And they bring out new topics every month. So go ahead and make sure that you, look at that on a monthly basis to see what's out there. They have phase 1, so as I mentioned earlier, they go as low as 75K for just 3 months, where they just really want to look at, that's in the AFWERX department in particular, where they just want to look at feasibility. Does it make sense? Would it work? And how would it fit in within the military? That's a short study, 3 months. They go up to 250, 6 months long, for what they call a TRL, test readiness level of 3 to 4. And then a phase 2 is standard 1 to 1.5 million for 18 to 24 months, where you then go about validating your technology. You want to have a prototype that you test under, life conditions, real life conditions. So TRL levels 5 through 6 on average. How do you vet your technology? How do you know whether or not your technology might fit within the military? Because not everybody is privy of what's going on in the military. But they want us to apply and get into it. So here are a couple of ways, at least, we found helpful that allows you to vet your technology. In particular, we're looking at, for the Air Force, they have an AFWorks program, and the Air Force Research Laboratory. So they have about 10 different laboratories across the Air Force where they do research, and they have a Tech Connect website portal, which is listed here. And you can submit about a one-pager of your technology, describing your technology and saying what you have, and they will vet it against or compare it against current activities in the departments, in the laboratories, to see if there's a fit. And if there is, they'll reach out to you and recommend that you reach out to whoever, colonel such and such in this department, because they might be interested in your technology. So that's a fantastic way to find out if you have a good fit there. Also, there's another way for the Special Operations Forces. They have a website which is similar. We have to submit a short white paper, so a little bit more involved, but still you get feedback from them, not just for the Air Force, but the Special Forces operate under all branches, so Army and Navy, etc. And so they will reach out and figure out if there's some research that aligns with your technology. And again, we'll get back to you and say, hey, please reach out to this individual, whatever. So those are two great ways that we found to sort of get in to figure out, is your technology for the Department of Defense. In terms of success stories, keeping it here in Nevada, the Dynapic Inc. Out of Reno, they did it right, I think. I'm going to use them as a success story here because they have not just one, but several. You'll see they started in 2013 with one award, and they worked up to this past year. They amassed about 8 million from the departments here, from non-dilutive funding from the agencies. These are the agencies, by the way. This is all the topics. You can see the Department of Defense is really a world in and of itself. So anything you can think of, the Department of Defense is probably looking for or would like to improve upon, whether or not it's something that has to do with delivering dishes or cleaning dishes in the cafeterias for personnel or maintenance, augmented reality, health for their employees. So really anything that you can think of, it's probably somehow used in the military. So it's definitely, that's why so many people apply, and that's why we have lots of funding also. But if you look at that Dynapic from Reno, Nevada, they started in 2013. They did an NSF, and not sure if they branched out or not. I always recommend, and we recommend, to take the same solicitation, or rather the same technology, same scope, same aims, and modify them and apply to other agencies. So branch out. We're talking about different success stories for different agencies, but they could have as well applied to other agencies, most likely because there's always a crossover. So there's not just one agency that will use your technology. Most likely there'll be a couple of different kinds of agencies, types of agencies. And so the idea there is to branch out, see where the shoe might fit, submit, and then specialize thereafter. And that's exactly what these folks did, or that's the way it looks. There was some 2013, and there was nothing for a while. In 2019, they switched over to the DoD. They got an award, followed by a phase 2. So phase 1, phase 2. The next year, they had a similar technology. Their technology is augmented reality based. Similar technology, so they got another phase 1 and another phase 2 the following year. And then in 22, it really hit. So they stuck with it, and they invested in the relationships, I'm pretty sure, at the Department of Defense. And they got a TACFI, which is sort of a phase 2B. I mentioned earlier, it's like the next step to commercialization. So phase 2B TACFI of like 1.5 or so million. And then the following year for the related technology, they got a StratFi, which is another phase 2B that's even higher for over $4 million, all from the military, all from the Department of Defense. So strategy is figure out what kind of agencies you can apply to, see where it hits, where you can get the awards, and then work your way into those agencies, make connections, keep connections, and try to follow on. Because eventually these whole SBIR programs and STTR programs are all about commercializing, whether or not it's within the agency that you apply to. And the DoD, of course, you can make tons of money selling your technology to the DoD, but also then on the commercial side, for the NSF, for example, they really don't care that much about your technology in the sense of they don't want to buy it from you. They just want to make sure that you have innovative technologies and then commercialize it and make some money off of it. That's the whole gist of it. Here we have the Department of Energy, which also receives quite a bit of funding in the several hundred millions. They have a very nice website, nicely organized. They have 2 announcements per year, July and somewhere around now. So there are some openings right now there on the solicitation side of things. They do have a letter of intent that you have to submit. So some agencies have letters of intent, some don't, meaning you have to make sure that you submit the letter of intent, which has to be submitted prior, usually a month or a month and a half prior to the SBIR proposal submission. Because if you don't, you won't get in. They won't accept your proposal. In this case, you don't have to. They won't tell you yes or no. They'll just not reply if it's okay. They'll say no. If you miss something or whatever, you're not compliant, then they'll let you know. But otherwise, they won't reply. They just need that letter of intent to make sure that they have enough staff, enough reviewers on hand when it comes time to reviewing all the applications that are coming in. So keep in mind, letters of intent sometimes are required. And again, it's like a 3 to 4 months turnaround time, so fairly quick. Phase 1 projects average 200,000, depending on topic, over 9 months, and phase 2 is 1 million or so going forward. Then in terms of the topics, anything energy related, batteries, energy transportation, storage is a really big thing right now. We have lots of types of technologies that are related to that, but lots of other ones as well, even nuclear. Some success stories here out of San Antonio, developing environmentally friendly technologies for recycling, strategic value added rare earth metals. That's very opportune at the moment because rare earth metals, you might have heard just a couple of days ago, China declared that they will no longer sell the United States rare earth metals, or at least certain like gallium and others, which are required in the manufacturing industry and the high-tech industry, chip industry. So recycling products that we have already is definitely in demand for sure. We have one from Lancaster. CO2 also is another one, direct air capture of CO2. We have a couple of companies that work on related technologies, figuring out how to improve efficiencies for these direct air captures, make them viable so that they can make money off of it while also reducing the CO2 in the atmosphere. Then the EPA I mentioned earlier, I'm hoping that will continue. There's a lot of good stuff coming out of there. We'll see how the funding develops going forward, but they have only 1 annual solicitation, so not as much funding compared to some of the other ones due in August. 100,000 for 6 months, phase 1, 400,000, sort of lower amounts for the phase 2s. Some success stories here in terms of what they're looking for: clean energy, I think stands to reason, air quality, climate, even circular economy. Success stories here, we have mushroom-based materials being used for including packaging, construction materials. That's big, like natural fibers. We have a couple companies that work on natural fiber manufacturing techniques to replace plastics and other non-renewable items. So there's a lot of funding there in that area, not just for the EPA, but USDA has some related technologies that they were looking for as well. So there's a crossover there. We have some other ones here you can read. Efficiency. Okay. Let's talk about strategy for success. There's an outline right here. We'll go into details more. In general, you want to begin your registrations early. So there's lots of different types of registrations. We'll look at those in just a second. Begin those early, because if you don't, we have companies that don't take care of it early enough, and then during submissions they're still trying to figure out how to get the last registrations in place. So they take a while, or can take a while, or a lot of times there's issues with LLC naming / owners' email addresses, etc. Now where you fit, match your technology. So we talked about that. Try to look for multiple agencies, so not just one agency that stands to reason in terms of where the best technology fit might be, but seek out the other ones with the links that we'll give you in the end to see whether or not there's some other agencies that might look for very similar technology. Sometimes you have to modify your technology slightly in order to make it a fit, but it's it depends on your strategy of your business. It might behoove you to do so, modify it, get some funding for that, and advance your own technology in the process as well. So related type of technology applications. Then evaluate your TRL levels. So starting with, are there hopefully some phase 0, like Startup Nevada is helping out with. It's always good to find people that can tell you what to do, what to look out for, resources and so forth. That's really the most difficult part. Once you have a phase 1 or a couple of phase 1s, then it's easy to win phase 2s. But you got to see what kind of TRL level your current technology is at, and then apply accordingly on a phase 1 or phase 2, or direct to phase 2, a combination of the two, as Anna mentioned earlier, where you can apply to a phase 1 and a phase 2 at the same time. Exists as well. And then start writing your proposal. Start doing it early enough. There's a lot that goes into it. 3 months is a good round number from your submission deadline, because you do have to coordinate with subcontractors for the most part, and other key members, and get the bio sketches in and so forth. So there's some back and forth. It takes a while to put one together, and you have to review it, and then submit and adjust and submit to other agencies as well. So let's look at that in detail here. On the registration side of things, you will always need SBIR.gov, login.gov, and SAM.gov. Those are the main 3 ones that I think most always required, if not always. And then, so get those done early if you can, to get the kinks out of the way, and then move on to other ones. So it's imperative that you read the solicitation. I think without it, it's hard to really comply. Not only do you have to know what kind of where you have to submit it, like the Department of Defense, for example, they submit all their proposals through, or ask you to submit them through DSIP. There's a DSIP portal. So you'll need the registrations for that if you want to work with the Department of Defense. NIH, other ones have their own. All that is captured in the solicitation. Now, each solicitation, some can be very, very long, like the BAs for the military. Others are shorter. They're all different. I haven't found a good way. I think somebody needs to develop an AI tool to really figure out how to get the solicitations in line, because they're all different, and you can't search for the same search terms because they're all called something slightly different, and it's frustrating, but it is what it is. But that being said, we definitely want to read those solicitations. It's imperative, because there's always small little things in there that you will miss otherwise during submission time or prior. And then here we have a way to check your calendars in terms of going on SBIR.gov. You'll see this this calendar. You'll see it's out of date. Hopefully they'll update it. I just downloaded this like a couple days ago. Hopefully they'll update that at some point. But this is mostly just to give you an overview of what grants are out there and when they're happening. So it's just a nice check. I would definitely go on these grants.gov or sam.gov. They're both portals where you can search for grants. Actually, I recommend not necessarily doing that. Do it just once to see whether or not you can find your way through there. There's lots of other grants besides SBIR grants. Tons of different non-dilutive funding is out there in other forms. So if you're just looking for SBIRs, it's sometimes not that easy to find. And that's why I like to go to these individual links. So all these little different departments here that you see on the left-hand side, they have individual portals where you can search specifically for grants related to your technology. You can put your technology in there and find those. And I think that's a lot more efficient doing it that way. More productive, I think. I'm going to hand it over to Anna.
Yes, so right now you have your company, you already decided what agency you're going to apply to. You already said, okay, I'm going to apply for the Department of Education. You already looked at the solicitation, you saw what registrations are required, you did an online search to one of those websites that Kristian already showed to see similar grants that were funded, when your solicitation is due, and all that information. So then you need to decide if you're ready for a phase 1 or if you're ready for a phase 2. So here you have phase 0. 0 is basically what Startup Nevada is doing, helping you put out proposals. So NIH, for example, National Institutes of Health, has a ton of webinars. They even pay some consulting firms to help you write the proposal. A lot of cities and municipalities also have grant writing services to help with the strategy, with the proposal, understanding or commercialization. So phase 0 is where you're gonna go and search for all of that. But as a general rule, if you're developing the product, if you're doing R&D, you go for phase 1. If you have already a prototype or you are more advanced, you would go for phase 2. If you already went through phase 2, you can always apply for phase 3. So this is very general, and you have also more information on the website there. You can pass. So right now you already decided, I'm gonna go for the Department of Education. I already did my registration. The solicitation is open because it's December, it's due in January. So I need to pick up the solicitation and start writing my proposal. So what you need to do? So first of all, solicitations change from year to year. So you might get the prior solicitation to get an idea, but always get the one that's from this year and that's appropriate for what you're applying right now, because there might be something that changed from last year that might disqualify you, or there might be things that make it easier now. So make sure you have the last one, the one that's pertinent to your project, and read it thoroughly. Then the next step we recommend is to write a small abstract, half a page to 1 page, describing what you need to do, just your idea, very broadly, what you want, what's your direction, what resources you need, and then broad aims. Think about, I have $300,000 for a phase 1, I have 3 objectives. What would they be? So with that, with a small abstract and the specific aims, you should go in the solicitations. They usually have listed who the technical managers or topic directors are. So you should contact that person and say, hey, I'm so-and-so. I'm the owner or the CEO or the main scientist at company X, and I'm gonna apply for the solicitation open right now in your agency, and this is my abstract and my specific aims, and I would like to have a conversation with you to get your feedback. So that's super important. It's important because you will get the feel if the person who is managing those grants is interested in your technology. Second thing, you will know if the direction, they might be interested in the general area you're working in, but your approach might just not be in line with what they're looking for this year. They always have priorities and topics, and there's things like a slight modification in your technology might make the whole difference. So in that meeting, you're going to go and you're going to fish for information and feedback, but you're also looking to establish a relationship. So when your manuscript gets to that person's desk, that's the person who's gonna assign it to review. And the better they know your project, the better your review committee will be. So so you're looking for two things: feedback and relationship. So now you talk with them, they love your project, you're ready to write, you looked at the solicitation, you go through, you fill out all the things. What you need also, apart from a good project and a good innovation, it's a good team. So what's a good team? A good team is a team for an SBIR that has the right technical people, but also the right business people. So this is not a research grant. This is a grant with a product on innovation that might come from academia or might come from science research, but needs to be commercialized. So you need, so for example, if you're making a robot with AI, you will need an engineer for the hardware, you will need an AI scientist for the AI, but then you'll need a business person to actually show that once you're done with your research, you can sell it to someone, and who is your client, what's your market, that you know exactly what you're gonna do. If you fall short on the commercialization side, on the business side, you're not getting the grant. So that's super important. That's where I see people failing, is when they don't align the science with the commercialization. This is a business grant. You'll get a profit for it. You're a company. It needs to serve a purpose that people can use. And then the last, but also very important, give yourself time. This is not easy. You're asking for federal money. That's why a lot of people like me and Kristian exist, because it's not easy. So you need time, you need supporters, and there's a lot of auxiliary documents apart from the proposal itself. So biosketches, budgets. Give yourself time to understand all of that, because a mistake in one of those documents can disqualify you or can come out as a red flag. So give yourself at least 3 months to complete the proposal. Okay, so now you're done. You have your first draft of your proposal. So what do you need to do? So the first thing after you have a draft, just let it sit for a while, review it again, but then circulate it to your friends, other scientists, people from the same area, members of the same incubator, and get their feedback. It needs to be clear and understandable, and they need the message you are trying to convey in your manuscript needs to be passed to these other people. So feedback is really invaluable. In academia, we always say finish a month before, so you can circulate it to all the other scientists and get their feedback, because then it's when the improvement really gets on. So yeah, just don't be afraid, show it to as much people as you know. Then you can, as Kristian said, once you have the first draft and you see, okay, this is a great grant for the Department of Education, but maybe the military also has educational programs and I can also apply there. So it's really easy to just, for the second time, read another solicitation and adapt the requirements. Once you have a draft, it's much easier to apply for other agencies. And same thing, if you're going to apply to another agency, meet again with the program manager, make sure it's aligned so you don't waste your time, you don't waste their time, and that you are a good fit for that particular center as well. You can pass. So who are we? So BW & Co. or Baginski, Wagner and Company, we help people with all the modalities of grant writing. You can pass for the next slide. I think it has the little diagram. Yes, so we help you. So Kristian and I were more involved with the strategy, how you fit the proposal, relationship with program managers, framing your proposal, making sure there's no red flags. We also are always accompanied by a medical writer, so a specialist in the field or in the grant you are applying to, who writes the grant and meets with you every week until you're ready. We also facilitate these relationships with program managers, with experts, letters of recommendation, commitment. That's very important, not only your project, but who is supporting you. And we have a submissions team that uploads all these documents. So the registrations are a pain. Nobody likes it. So we have a team that does that for you. They meet on Zoom with you, help filling it out. They upload all the documents, confirm. We confirm everything is right. The grant writer confirms it, and they confirm it as well. So we make sure everything is good. So we take a lot of the work from your plate and also increase your likelihood of success. You can pass. Yes, so our model is we write your first draft, and then once that draft is ready, we can apply for everything that fits over a certain period of time, usually a year. We'll pick up that proposal, and if you fit in DoD, we apply for DoD, HHS as well, we apply that as well. So we maximize your chances for success, because we are constantly scanning for grants, constantly looking at solicitations. We are always on top of it. Yeah, so if you need help, here are our contacts. We'll share the presentation with you as well, and we'll answer your questions in the chat. I hope you find it helpful. And if you have more questions, yeah, we're always, that's what we do all the time, helping people get money, basically. So yeah, we're really happy when we can help small companies and see especially good technology that's helping people or the environment or whatever it is, better agriculture. We're really happy when you can do that. So, yep.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. A fantastic presentation. Now I know we have a few questions in the chat. I see one here from Chris Bowman. He says, if we have developed a technological platform, an ecosystem that will facilitate several brands with each brand solving for a major critical infrastructure problem across various sectors, for example, security, medical, EMS, there's a long list. Would you recommend that we apply for several grants from different departments specific to the problems that each brand solves, or are they limited?
Yeah, I would assume that you would have to find, unless you find a grant that you know, requires you to develop the whole enchilada, you probably have to divvy it up and only find sections or grants that are applicable to each subsection or subtechnology or you know, that your technology incorporates. So looking for specific grants just for developing certain parts of your technology is perfectly acceptable, as long as you have a you know, a future in mind in terms of where you're going to head next, where the technology goes, i.e., you're going to combine it with other technology to achieve the major goal, whatever it might be. So they'll fund your section of it for sure, as long as there's a commercialization part of it. Again, most important part is you have to show that your product is commercially viable. How so, and how are you going to get there? Even if you're just solving a small part of the technology currently.
Great, thank you. And a follow-up to that, can you, say you write a proposal to 2 different agencies for the exact same thing, can you accept funds from both of those from the same project period?
No, you need to change it slightly. Yeah, you need to change it slightly.
But that's always not that hard. I mean, you can change the scope slightly. There's always ways to adjust the scope for the same technology to advance it to the same technology, but with different scope. But if you do get 2, hey, you know, more power to you. That's fantastic. And you can accept, unfortunately, only 1. But if you're, you know, there's ways that a lot of companies do that. They really just, slightly modify the technology or the scope. You don't want to, get paid for the same thing twice, basically. That's unethical. You can't do that. But again, it's not that hard to really just readjust the scope and validly claim that you're developing other aspects of the same technology.
Great, thank you. And Shaq asks, do you have any recommendations for software that can help founders navigate the search, the grant search?
Depends on the agency. Yeah, because it's grants.gov, but it's so broad that it might be confusing. So depending on the agency, there's better softwares than others. Yeah.
Yeah, it's when you find, let us know, because we're looking for it ourselves. As I mentioned earlier, I probably have to develop some sort of an AI, or somebody needs to develop an AI tool that can scour the net and figure out an easy way to find all those. Because the engines that are out there, grants.gov and sam.gov, are not very user-friendly in my eyes. So it's hard to find. They are all out there, so they technically should all the SBIRs should be on sam.gov and or grants.gov. So you should find them, but it's just much easier currently just to go to all those links that are listed on one of the slides, and under each agency separately search for the topic that you're interested in.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's difficult to find one source of truth. What I tend to do is I subscribe to the mailing lists and then they can just email me when opportunities open. That seems to be the best thing without you having to go through each of the databases.
I agree, yeah.
Yeah, so I have a question from Leona. So does the university own the IP developed from an STTR grant?
No, you own it together. So you have to do an IP agreement. For STTRs, there's a special IP rights agreement that there exists that are templates out there where you then share joint ownership of the technology. They usually, universities usually only want the right to perpetually in perpetuity and royalty-free be able to use the technology for themselves. But they usually don't want to make money of it. Usually, it's not always the case, but that's something that you have to figure out while signing this contract with the university.
We do find that most of our clients stay away from the STTR. They prefer to hire the university as a subcontract or just pay them if they're performing a service, just because of exactly that question. Yeah.
Great, thank you. Question from Pelin. I'm into health tech, heading to CES soon. We are in a scale-up process. Would you have any specific suggestions for us? B2B incubators or B2G, business to government? Any suggestions? It's hard to know without a lot of details from this.
Yeah, could you send us an email with more details?
Sure,
I'd be happy
I would love to do that.
Yeah, do it. We can help definitely, but I will need a bit more of information.
Sure, I'm completely fine with it. I just have a short time, so that's why I was really looking for this webinar. And thank you so much for both of
You're
you.
welcome.
Thanks a lot. It helped me a lot. I've learned a lot. I obtained a lot. Thanks a lot.
You're welcome. Also, your state depends on the resources you'll get, depend on your state, where you're located as well.
Well, currently California, and
Oh, that's
probably
good. Okay.
sorry, I cut you off. Probably looking forward, like moving forward to Maine, because we are seeking for 50 plus, because we're targeting that. That's our customer segment. So that's why I was much more interested getting to know details of that specifically.
Okay. Yeah, like we can book a meeting with you and go through it, without any contract or anything. We can just, help you out.
Sure. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, great. Any other questions? Feel free to drop them into the chat. Okay, I think that's it. Kristian, if you could stop sharing screen, I'd like to share our next event for January. Wonderful. Thank you so much, Anna and Kristian, for your time. It is really, really fantastic to hear all about the resources of the SBIR program and some of the details and getting into the weeds. We have our next series, session of the series on January 24th. We're going to be talking a little bit about the NIH program. So be sure to save the date and register here, and you can find more information on our calendar of events and on our website. So I can put this in the chat and I will send this out after today's session. So thank you all so much for joining us, and we will see you at the next one.
Bye. Thank you.
Cheers.